our live session. Here we go. I think we are good to go. Oh my gosh, it's crazy. I mean, gosh, it is Thursday, November 5th. I'm sure everyone has just been, on the heels of, or on their toes or on some sort of body part, wondering what the hell is going on in the world. What does the election currently mean as it stands? Happy Friday, Ruthie. Thanks for joining. I think the question really is coming out, which is how are we looking at the world? How are we looking at retail, and how are we ultimately thinking about our brands? Now, the majority of you guys here in the audience are getting ready to launch your businesses. You're getting ready to potentially launch for the first time this holiday season. Perhaps you're kind of getting ready to launch next year, and you're wondering, oh my gosh, what are all the things that I should be thinking about and doing, and how does this election really impact me? And so today's conversation, as I get myself all situated, today's conversation is really going to be centered around the pros and cons of having a brand and kind of launching in today's market. Now, one of the things that I think is really important to realize is, unfortunately, as we start to think about the needs of the market and how we look at positioning and branding and customer acquisition, things are changing, and they're changing rapidly. In fact, over this last week, we saw a huge increase in acquisition costs on marketing, mostly because of the election. And we're going to continue to see high customer acquisition costs as we move into the rest of the year. So I think it's important to realize, guys, that, holiday, hard time to launch a brand. 2021, easier time to launch a brand. There's a little bit less going on at the beginning of the year. And as you're kind of looking at, let's say, a Feb or March launch, I think that's a good idea, or even maybe a May launch, kind of an early summer. Maybe you're even considering doing a launch, at that time period around, let's say, maybe it's like, August, September. I do think that October becomes a really challenging time for us to think about launching. So my perspective of, the right timeliness to launch, I think is really going to be there's these kind of three main areas, right? So you're looking at either kind of March, you're also looking at maybe May, June, and then you're looking those are the kind of three main kind of position to cons, and we're looking at kind of this, the economic landscape, and we're looking at consumer behavior and shifting. This is not the time to be launching, formal evening wear. This is not going to be the time to be launching things that have to do with, festival wear and getting together and community. Unfortunately, right, we're looking right now at kind of the major key themes and categories that are going to be most beneficial for next year, kind of coming in through the lens of things that are more athleisure, active wear, things that are destined for the home, so home goods. We're also looking at things that are really Zoom appropriate, so brands that are focused primarily on tops, brands that are primarily focused on let's say blazers. A friend of mine the other day, I was noticing, and she was doing this thing on Instagram where it was like, okay, it's another Zoom day, another blazer, right? Time to buy more blazers. I mean, it's really kind of an interesting time period as we think about what the right products are for the market right now. Now, certainly outside of fashion and ready-to-wear, guys, there are a lot of other product categories that we can be looking into. Certainly masks are going to be on the horizon as we look to see the second wave of COVID hit, and we're kind of thinking about what does that mean for 2021. Guys, we're going to be facing this kind of mask business industry need, I would say, for at least another 12 months, really good product categories to be thinking about. We also want to be thinking about things like, home decor, home items, looking into other kinds of verticals. This isn't necessarily the time to be launching high heels, but this could be a great time to be launching a house slipper, right? Or a slipper, or something that you can wear easily in and out of the house. I'd say I'm not your average consumer. I'm certainly one who's interested in buying party dresses, and I dress up just to kind of be at home. But, it's a very small number of us that have that kind of point of view towards house dressing, if you will. But as we're looking at kind of the pros and cons, I want to outline just a few of the bigger areas in which you're probably not really paying attention to. So number one is your marketing costs and your acquisition costs are going to continue to increase now more so than ever, even coming out of the holiday time period. And why is that? Well, guys, every brand is launching DTC. And what does that mean? Well, it means that the auction cost for ads are going to be steadily increasing. So really important to understand that, the cost to play, right, is going to be high. And so you need to have the resources to be able to play. If you don't have the resources to play, then you need to be thinking about alternative advertising streams and alternative advertising models. Now, what's hard about that is those channels also often are kind of predicated on relationships and who you know. So when you look at your resource allocation, it's like, okay, I need advertising dollars for sure. I need more advertising dollars to capture a customer going into 2021 than maybe I did going into 2020, again, just because of saturation in the market. Then we kind of take the other step of this and we say, well, if it's not just traditional advertising channels, meaning Facebook, Instagram, social, what are the other platforms I need to be considering from a by channel marketing spend? And so for those channels, I kind of think about things like, direct mailers I think are good. You're certainly looking at brand and kind of business development. So who are the other brands out there? Where are kind of the opportunities to cross-pollinate? That becomes really important. So do you have those partnerships in place? And then also understanding where you are your sales channels. So are you, did you launch your brand with intent to be able to convert on a wholesale account? If so, if you're wholesale motivated, if your brand is 100% wholesale motivated and you're new, this is going to be a really hard time for you to launch your brand. If you are launching DTC and wholesale, you've got kind of a nice product mix of product exclusives, distribution platforms, et cetera, then you're gonna be in a much better position, right? And so when I think about the positioning on that, right, in my mind, that really leads to us basically saying okay, if it's not gonna just be regular advertising and it's not just gonna be selling wholesale, but I have to have direct to consumer, how do I start to cross-pollinate? Who are the people that I know? How do I start to build those, right? Ever gets done happens all without business development. I remember when I first started scaling retail, I sent out a crap ton of emails to a lot of different people, just letting people know that I existed. Heck, we still do that. We're like, hey, this is who we are. Who are you? Let's get to know each other. And these aren't sales emails. These are business development emails. This means I'm not cold pitching customers, right? I'm actually reaching out to other people where I believe we share a very similar audience, where I believe that there might be synergies there. So start to make a list of where you might find the most synergies within your organization and who those potential brand partners might be. And I think that could be an excellent place to start. Now, what are the pros right now going into next year? And how can you be optimistic about launching a brand? There's a lot of great shit happening. Number one, we are entering, while we see minimum wages increasing, we're still entering into a lower labor market, meaning unemployment is still bad. People need jobs. And if you're in a position to be hiring and to be leveraging this market and you have resources, this is a great opportunity for you guys to be leveraging labor markets to be able to get the same things that you needed at a lower price point, right? So heavily consider labor market leveraging in terms of really making the best of 2021. The other thing that's really important is if you are planning on launching direct to consumer, this is definitely going to be the year in which you're going to be able to see, I think, a lot more traction. So what does that mean? If you have the budgets, right? So remember, 2020, we're seeing a huge fallout. We're seeing brands that never had sustainable business models to begin with fall away, right? We're seeing brands that kind of needed to pivot, be forced to pivot or fall away. So while there is a saturation of marketing spend, you also see kind of the disillusion of brands that were unsustainable and not able to keep up with cash flows in terms of how this year is panning out. So there is going to be kind of an entryway in the market. I would say take a look at your brand either from the perspective of what are, where am I kind of coming in? Where is there an incumbent brand or brands? And where can I come in to either undermine the market and kind of disrupt the market? Or is there a market in industry where I can actually come in and be ahead of the market and offer a more premium price and a more premium product? So looking at that from two different perspectives, right? We're going to see a shift towards premium and luxury. We're also going to see a shift towards aspirational and kind of looking for brands who are undercutting the market. And I mean undercutting it not just in terms of pricing, but looking at things like technology advancements, looking at things like key benefits and features, right? So think about how you can really separate yourself from the pack by doing something that is either moving upstream or moving downstream in the market, if you find that your market is saturated in the middle. The other thing to consider, there are a lot of saturated markets, but there are a lot of undersaturated voices. Now, we've been seeing this year, obviously, and you guys have all had your TVs open and eyes tuned, really kind of the rise of the BLM movement. We're seeing a lot of more visibility onto Black voices, Black designers, Aurora James with Brother Vellies and the 15% pledge. We're seeing a lot of disruption in terms of how we look at brand market visibility. And so when it comes to, oversaturated product categories, what you're likely going to find is that every goddamn person has a goddamn t-shirt. And so does it really matter if you're also selling a t-shirt? Well, yeah, you can make the case that there isn't enough space. However, given market positioning and branding, you might find that your voice kind of elevates and speaks to a customer in a new way. And so 2021 is really this amazing platform for you to discover, uncover, and shed light on unique voices and brand value propositions, packaged beautifully. So what does that mean? It means that you can't just have the right message. The message has to be consumer friendly and it has to be packaged properly. How do you package it? Well, like with anything in our industry, you either have the intrinsic talent, the right people, or you pay for it. Sometimes it's a combination of all three. So the areas in which you're going to kind of win, I would see in 2021, looking at underserved voices where your brand positioning might be able to find some success, and then taking a look at kind of the different components of how you're going to package that. So what are the kind of visual brand DNAs that you guys are working with? Reflective of what's happening in the community today, that are kind of deaf to the market or deaf to people are falling by the wayside, right? If you're not speaking about the election, if you're not talking about things that are happening in the world, you find that you're losing more and more market share. You can't be milquetoast anymore, right? Milquetoast doesn't work. I was just talking to somebody earlier today and she was like, hey, I put out this brand and I'm wondering, why is this brand not resonating? And she's like, I want it to be a contemporary brand. And I was like, well, your brand looks like a Missy brand. And, where you want to be, right, isn't where you're at. And so unfortunately, or fortunately, I end up being the person to tell people the harsh news, which is, hey, like, this needs to change. This isn't going to get you where you want to go. So be open to a lot of discerning feedback. Make sure that you guys are understanding kind of where your underserved voices show up. Make sure it's packaged properly. So images, assets, communication, even your product development and the cycles of delivery. How frequent, I sit on the board of directors at the Downtown Women's Center, which is, this incredible social enterprise. And we're talking about, product planning for 2021. And we're talking about, hey, is it possible for us to actually decide what we're making for the entire year? Let's sample everything for the whole year. And then let's do like monthly deliveries. Let's just literally stack up 2021 by the end of this year. Make it easy. Make 2020, thanks. Syama tells it like it is. That's really sweet. Thanks. I try to tell it like it is. I can't help myself, unfortunately. But I would say, really think about, how do I make 2021 as easy as possible? So like, don't overdo it on product development. Don't overdo it on like assortment. Keep it lean, keep it tight, over penetrate your budget into marketing dollars. Look at your business development relationships and then ask yourself, where do I need to fill in the holes? If your brand looks super DIY, it's not going to fly. Like super DIY shit was really big like 10 years ago when like we were like, oh, Shopify, there's a template, you know, like there's a thing for that. The landscape, even though unsustainable business models are falling by the wayside and there is a new kind of landscape for new brands, what is being asked of you as a brand is so much more today than it has been in the last 10 years. You are being asked to be a media company. You are being asked to speak your politics, your values. You're being asked to be a person. You are being asked to show yourself as a founder and a CEO. So your personal positioning becomes valuable, right? The entire way in which everything gets packaged becomes really important. So yes, lots of opportunities in 2021, lots of opportunities to do some really cool, interesting things for your brand. As with any year, as with 2020 and the years before, it's going to take strategic planning. It's going to take having a strong hold on your finances. So guys, if you don't have the money to buy inventory, if you don't have the money to do marketing, you probably don't have the money to launch your brand, right? So kind of looking at your financial overview of what it's actually going to take. So I would say going into 2021, this is the time to like really get shit right and to be smart and to say to yourself, can I do this in a real way? Is this going to be a meaningful launch? If this is not going to be meaningful, right, how do I either dilute that so that it becomes something that is meaningful? So how can I do this in a lesser version so that it can actually be more than this? And I think that that's really helpful. And then the other component to that is, hey, maybe I need to put a pin in this. Maybe I need to pick up some freelance work. Maybe putting all my eggs in the basket of launching my brand isn't a good idea if I don't have enough money to do it the right way. And that, I think, guys, is probably where I'll kind of mic drop today's conversation, which is do it right. You know, oftentimes I hear people saying, well, I want an MVP. I just want to test it. Do you know what goes into a test? Like, you don't just test a product. I assume that your t-shirt has a hole for my head and 2 holes for my arms. I assume that. You're not going to test the t-shirt. The t-shirt should just work, right? What are you testing? You're testing product, you're testing branding, you're testing positioning, right? You are testing the cohesiveness of branded emotional right? It's not just simply, you know, does the product work, right? It's truly about the synthesis of all of these combinations of things coming together and seeing if that works. And then, guys, you don't just test it for a month, you test it for 18 months. You test it over, you know, multiple deliveries, right? You don't just drop into the market, drop out of the market. It's the worst thing that you can do. So going into 2021, I'm extremely optimistic. I've had a number of clients that are up to really cool things that are joining these new brands that are on the market, that are going to be doing so strategically, right, methodically, with the right pricing, with the right market exposure, with the right steps that are in place. And I honestly believe, guys, that if you are not going through this strategically, you're better off holding your pennies and saving them until you can, because I'd rather you take $5,000 today, save your money to get to $50,000, and take $5,000 and say, well, I'm going to do this one thing, right? No, it's not just about the one activity. It's about the orchestra. All right, guys, that's all for me. Thank you so much for tuning in to Makers Row. Really excited about all of the, you know, super fun and interesting kinds of programming that we have. Once again, I'm Syama Meagher, the CEO of Scaling Retail, and I hope you guys tune in to see me speak soon. You know, there's always so many interesting and exciting things that are happening in this world of retail, but be smart, you know, don't be a dummy. Don't just waste your money on this thing or that thing. You know, do it the right way. I'll leave you with one more thing. This year, so many more people became day traders. And what are day traders? Well, they're the ones who kind of drop in and they spend all day on the market and they're looking at things and they're buying and selling. And, you know, they make a profession out of being in the market. A lot of people this year entered into the market. You might have been one of those people who got a Robinhood account. What's interesting about people who got into the stock market this year, who've never before been in the stock market and who are day trading, are actually historically losing money. right? You might see that you are increasing in your stock positions, or that certain stocks are increasing. But if you're day trading, you might be getting hit with fees, right? You might be getting hit with all sorts of transaction costs. You might actually, because you're not able to spend every day understanding kind of the cash flows of these businesses and what their actual price earnings ratio multiple should look like and all of that, you might find yourself kind of missing the boat, right? So are you better off just putting it in an index fund and letting it grow, or do you want to be actively trading your resources? And so I would say, when you're looking at your business, it's very similar. Like, don't jump into this and kind of like spend a bunch of money and try to move things around, and either go the safe route, which is go with an agency, a company, a person, a consultant who can really guide you through this, right? Someone who can fully support you, or, learn all the steps yourself. And the hard thing about learning all the steps yourself and being very thorough and diligent is it takes time. So, you're looking at likely interning at a company, having different roles within an organization, really understanding how things work. There aren't professional programs I've ever found, even as a former teacher at the Fashion Institute, that actually prepares you to run a business other than the actual act of working for someone who is running a business. Nothing else will prepare you for it other than hiring a consultant or having someone support you through the process. So be smart, don't waste your money, be considerate and thoughtful for yourself as you're doing your own future forecasting and financial planning, and save your pennies until you're ready to really go big, right? And do something that's cohesive, thoughtful, and methodical. All right, I'll talk to you guys later. Have a great day. Bye.